Hey, what is up guys? This is Nishi from MST.TV here, back with another Market Watch episode. So this week we have a few interesting cards to talk about, mostly cards related to some new releases. Of course, we have Dimension Force officially dropping here in the TCG this weekend, and while it's not the most game-breaking or valuable set, anything like that, there are still some really useful cards that will boost a number of different strategies, which has in turn caused a few different buyouts. And of course, there's other products hitting the market in both the TCG and OCG, causing players to take a look at the market for cards from either format, just in case one happens to affect the other. Let's get started. So before we start, I guess I do want to talk a little bit briefly about these Starlights from Dimension Force, since that seems to be all that everyone is talking about in the Yu-Gi-Oh community. Now, for those of you who don't know, it seems that some people that ordered cases of Dimension Force received some boxes that had error packs, where there were hundreds of packs that each had 4 Starlight rares at the back of each pack. Obviously, this is a pretty crazy mistake to have happen, and if any of you guys happen to get a box like that, well, you basically hit the lottery, right? I'm not gonna get into this too much. What I will say, guys, is that you should be very careful with buying these Starlight rares from Dimension Force. I don't think that these cases took away Starlights from other cases, but rather, I believe that these were released to the market in addition to the usual ones that would have been pulled in all of the other cases, right? What that means is there's a huge surplus of Starlight rares on the market, and with everyone knowing that because of videos like this, I would certainly expect these Starlight rares to tank in price, even though now on some websites and stuff they may be relatively cheap, especially compared to some of those pre-sale prices that we're used to seeing. We can only suspect that more cases like this exist out there, and that those will continue to drag the prices down even further. I don't think this was done intentionally, obviously, as Konami would not want to devalue their product by releasing this excessive quantity back into the market. Realistically, I think it's like someone probably tried to steal it, and then before they got caught, they snuck the cards back into the machine that packages the cards, and that's why all of the Starlights are at the back of each of the packs. Anyways, the point is not to speculate about what happened, but rather it's to warn you all, even though the prices seem really great on some of these Starlight rares, definitely don't sink money into them anytime soon, because we don't know what the extent of the damage is in terms of devaluing the product, and we don't know where these prices are eventually going to settle down. To kick things off, let's take a look at No Punk Foxy Tune. So this is a pretty great card for the Punk archetype. It is one of their starters. Basically, you can special summon this card by tributing a Punk monster on your field, but you can also send this card from your hand or field to the graveyard, send another card from your hand to the graveyard, and then special summon a Punk monster out of your deck. This is a very useful effect since it can get other cards into the graveyard from your hand, and generally the Punk monster that you're summoning out is getting you another search, allowing you to break even. Now in the OCG, the Punk Therion deck wasn't tier 1, but it was a very strong deck that a lot of players are fond of, and there's certainly a lot of speculation here in the TCG that the deck might be just as strong. Because of that, both rarities of Foxy Tune from the Grand Creators set have jumped up in price. The Ultras were around $7 to $8, they are now up at $20 a piece, and the Collector's rares, which were $45 to $50, are now all the way up at $80 each. This card was definitely one of the more overlooked ultra rares from Grand Creators. Everyone was just so focused on all of the adventurer token stuff that it was easy to forget about the punks. But you can't really do that when it comes to the Yu-Gi-Oh market, or else you'll end up regretting it, the way that Devin Booker and the Phoenix Suns did after they overlooked the Dallas Mavericks going into Game 7. I think that this card was sought after a tiny bit when early Sword Soul builds were using the Punk engine to go into the Halka Fibrax combo, though I don't think that Sword Souls are playing that variant currently at all. Anyways, keep an eye on this card over the next couple of weeks after Dimension Force drops. If Punk Therion is a viable deck that sees some competitive success here in the TCG, expect Foxy Tune to continue to trend upwards, maybe up to $25 to $30, as it is a 3 of in that strategy. If the deck flops and isn't that great, then maybe this card does fall back down to between $10 to $15 until we can find something else that is able to abuse the Punk engine. Speaking of Grand Creators archetypes, next up we have Exo Sister Michaelis. So apparently all 3 of the themes from Grand Creators are pretty great, so Grand Creators is looking like a historically good set right now. Anyways, last week we saw Exo Sister packs jump up in price as a 3 of searcher for the strategy, Now we've seen Michaelis, one of the Ixie's monsters, jump up in price as well. I believe that all of the Exo Sister monsters have an effect where they can't be destroyed by battle with monsters summoned from the graveyard, and then they all also get additional effects if they have Exo Sisters as Ixie's material. Michaelis is kind of a good one. You can detach a material from it to search for an Exo Sister spell or trap card, and then if there's an Exo Sister underneath Michaelis, you get a quick effect to target and then banish one card from your opponent's field or graveyard, which is kind of nuts. I think that this card is actually played at 3 in the Exo Sister extra deck. It is just that versatile and strong. Michaelis was a $3 card just a few weeks ago. However, this card is already up to $8 each on TCG Player at the moment. If you guys are looking to play the Exo Sister deck once the new support comes out in Power of the Elements, then definitely consider grabbing your copies now. The archetype is still quite new, so I don't think they'll reprint everything anytime soon, but if Exo Sisters do become really good here in the TCG, the way that they've been able to compete and keep up with meta decks in the OCG, then this is definitely a card that could reach the $20 mark in just a matter of months. Next up, we're taking a look at Celestial Nightlord Parshath. I think that technically when this card came out, it was highlighted as Parshath support, but it's actually just kind of like generic fairy stuff. Its effect is pretty simple. It is a Link 3 monster that requires 2 or more fairies to make. On summon, you can search for a card with Sanctuary in the Sky in its text, or if you already control Sanctuary in the Sky, then you can search for any fairy monster instead. It does also have an effect where if it sees a fairy monster leave the field, you get to special summon a fairy out of your hand. So this card is a useful extra deck option for the Agent deck with the release of new Agent support in Ghosts from the Past 2. Agents being a deck that run fairy monsters almost exclusively. The deck can make some pretty scary boards, and while you don't make this card every single game, I think it's definitely a card that you will want to have access to. Anyways, this is a card that was previously considered bulk, but since it only has the 1 printing from back in Dual Overload, and is now an important card for a revamped strategy that was very popular with a lot of players, Celestial Nightlord Parshath is now a $4 to $5 card. Not a bad bit of value for a card that used to only be 25 cents, so if you happen to know that you have this card lying around in your bulk somewhere, definitely dig it up and look to offload it while it is worth something. Speaking of fairy monsters, the next card for us to talk about briefly here is the first Darklord. This is a super rare from Rise of the Duelist. I think that the thing I really don't like about this card is that it's only a super rare. I think it would have been a very beautiful secret rare, even though probably a lot of people wouldn't have liked it if it took up that secret rare slot and they pulled it. Anyways, believe it or not, this is actually an extra deck tech option for some Despia decks, as Aluber, Ad Libitum, and Despian Tragedy are all dark fairy monsters. This is a 4,000 attack point body that stops all fairies, including itself, from being targeted by card effects. It also allows you to pay 1,000 life points to special summon a fairy from your hand or graveyard. This means you can summon back Aluber to trigger its effect, and Aluber will also not be able to be targeted by Veiler or Infinite Impermanence because of the first Darklord. Now, I don't know just how good this tech is. It feels really situational. Maybe it's something that people are just trying out. I just know about it because someone at my local card shop told me about it. Because this card is from Rise of the Duelist, which is one of the greatest sets of all time, this card, despite being just a super rare, is still worth about $2 to $3. If you guys opened Rise of the Duelist and might have this card lying around in your bulk, it is another card that's definitely worth digging up and offloading if you can find someone at your locals who is looking to play it and pay up for it. So this is a weird little card, but next up we're looking at number 65, Djinn Buster. So this is a rare from back in Shadow Specters with only 1 printing. It can be made with 2 level 2 dark monsters, and it has a pretty simple effect. You can detach 2 materials from it to negate an opponent's monster effect and destroy it, then burn your opponent for 500 damage. Now this is a weird card that you've probably overlooked in the past, but for those of you that are paying attention to the OCG, this card is trending because of the Splight deck. There are some variants that use Dark Beckoning Beast instead of the Deep Sea Diva engine, and since they can still use the frogs to go into Totally Awesome, this variant instead uses the Dark Beast package to go into the Djinn Buster as an additional monster effect negation that can ensure that your combos go through. Number 65 is only available as a rare from back in Shadow Specters, which I think came out like almost a decade ago. As a result, there are very few quantities available on TCG Player at the moment. The cheapest ones right now are around $8 each. I don't know what engines people will eventually decide on using here in the TCG when the Splight stuff does come out, but this might be a card to try and dig out of your bulk, just in case it is useful eventually. I would try to keep a copy for yourself just to use in case you want to play it, but definitely consider offloading your extra copies because a reprint of this card in something like an OTS tournament pack would almost immediately cause its price to tank. Okay, so I guess I never thought I'd actually be talking about this card being worth something. I guess crazier things have happened over the last couple of years, so here we are. Bengal Lancer the Resurgent is a Link 4 plant monster that requires 2 or more plants to make. Its effect is kind of underwhelming, I guess it's still important. You can target an opponent's monster during the main phase as a quick effect, bounce that monster, then you burn for damage equal to its attack points. Then if this card is in your graveyard, you can basically Link summon it out of the graveyard by banishing 4 links worth of materials from your graveyard, but then you banish this card when it leaves the field. Now this is cool because you can Link with it and then summon it back and still have that interruption available to follow up with. So when we talked about Sunavalon Therion being a potentially good deck last week, with a new plant Therion from Dimension Force, I guess Bengal Lancer is a card that deck plays as well. Bengal Lancer used to be one of the worst secret rares from Lightning Overdrive, but apparently even a card like this will get its time to shine eventually. This card was worth like maybe $1 or $2 before. Now this card is up at $9 to $10 each, which is way more than I thought that this card would ever be worth. I definitely don't know anything about Sunavalon Therion, but I guess this is a card to keep an eye on over the next couple of weeks. If the deck ends up being really good, then maybe this card could continue to go up in price, being a key piece of the strategy. If the deck sucks, then this card will probably go back down to being worth just a few dollars. Now, one final card I want to wrap up with here is Orchis Harp Horror, specifically the super rare version. So I know that Harp is banned. There are a lot of people, including myself, that think that there's a chance that Harp could be unbanned. Because of this, we're getting like a mini maxi type of effect. People are getting really excited about the possibility of it coming off the list, so they buy their copies, which causes it to spike. However, if it doesn't come off the list, then the card will tank back down in price, whereas if it comes off, then the card will probably hit like $20, something crazy like that, who knows, within a week of it coming off. But then if it doesn't get unbanned, right, we will probably see the same cycle happen all over again the next ban this season. Anyways, for everyone's reference, Super Rare Harp Horror is currently an $8 card on TCG Player at the moment, which is a decent amount for a card that is banned with a couple of different printings. If you're one of those guys that wants Harp Horror unbanned, you've probably already missed your window to pick this card up if you don't already own it. Definitely consider holding onto all your copies of Harp for whenever the ban list does drop, and if Harp doesn't get unbanned, wait for the price to tank back down before you go and pick up multiple copies of this card for when the unbanning eventually happens. Okay guys, that is it for today's Market Watch episode. Good luck to all of you that are opening some Dimension Force this weekend. I hope that all of your boxes are those crazy ones that each have like multiple Starlights per pack in them. I don't know, I never get that lucky with my own packs, but hopefully this set will change something for us, right? Anyways guys, if you did enjoy today's video, please do let me know by hitting that thumbs up button for me. Also make sure you leave a comment in the comment section down below. Let me know what you guys think about the cards we talked about today, and let me know what other cards are trending on the market so I can cover them in a future episode as well. If you guys haven't already, do also make sure that you hit that subscribe button to get all of the latest and greatest content from both Tombox and myself here on the channel. And until next time guys, don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV.